Welcome to the Lila Life Show. I'm your host, Linda Andrews, and I'm excited to bring Dr. Elizabeth Sharp to the show. Welcome, Dr. Elizabeth Sharp.
Oh, thank you so much for that warm welcome and for having me on the show. I'm so excited to be here.
Glad to have you. I want to read a little bit of your bio before we dive in. You know what you are, but I want for our listeners to know a board certified internal medicine physician from Institute of Functional Medicine certified practitioner separately, and the founder and CEO of Health Meets Wellness. You started Health Meets Wellness to make functional medicine more accessible, combining your experience in healthcare and physical activity, specifically yoga, where you've completed your 200-hour yoga teacher training and believing in combining daily movement with medicine to help with your patients. You are dedicated to helping your patients reach your wellness goals and developed Health Meets Wellness with Troy Flanagan, PhD, and Susie Parker Simmons, RDN, specifically to help patients with wealth management. There's so many gems in there. I want to start today with your origin story and what got you to launch Health Meets Wellness, and turn the mic over to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk a little bit about Health Meets Wellness. It's been really fun getting to see something that I, kind of dreamed of then come to life. And the real goal for the practice is to bridge the gap between the health and wellness industry and medicine. And I started Health Meets Wellness because I love primary care. And so I've always loved the relationships that I have with patients and getting to see them over time really taking a deeper dive into their lifestyle, and then to practice lifestyle medicine or preventative care is what really got me into functional medicine. And so being able to now, do my own thing where I can really combine medicine, exercise, and nutrition under one umbrella has been really exciting. And so that's my view of holistic health.
I love it. And when you were going the med school path, were you and the primary care path, did you have your eyes set on functional medicine and the emergence of the nutrition and the wellness piece? How did that specifically evolve? Were you seeing something that made you feel like that needed to happen?
It's interesting. I feel like I didn't notice that it was missing when I was in med school, because a lot of the care that you are trained to do in med school is really more hospital centered, right? And so there's less primary care training. So you don't really see that part that's missing, which is what you start to kind of uncover. The better you get to know patients, the more you start to see some symptoms that maybe aren't explained by the more, traditional medical workup. And then as soon as you want to take a deeper dive, for me, it was really with a lot of gut health issues where I'd have a lot of patients come. I do the general workup, some blood work, rule out, concerning conditions, and then they would still have symptoms. And I'd be like, I want to be able to bring them more. There has to be more I can offer. And that's really what opened the door to functional medicine. And then that really started to help me understand how your diet and lifestyle weave together with your entire health.
I love that. It's so interesting. Personally, I don't know when I first found out about functional medicine, but I I do know it was through my own health challenges with my gut. And this is probably a while ago now, but I was like, there's got to be something different. And then I started hearing the whispers of functional medicine, and it's kind of some
Mm-hmm.
self-study pieces. I'm not a medical doctor at all, but like the desire for something more. And I'm just so excited to help illuminate how for someone right now experiencing some symptoms that they can do their own discovery around that something more. Obviously, you're a great resource and an asset for them to lean on to beyond a podcast episode, but especially being holiday season where you could be eating a little extra of all your favorite things, which could lead to more inflammation perhaps, or more of the underlying.
Yeah.
So I think we should start with what around the something more do people need to be paying attention to within themselves to be like, something's going on
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that, or a great thing to highlight, I think it's really important to know when to call something out, when to ask for help, when to say, okay, I need to, know more. I would say if a symptom has been around for more than 2 weeks, and
Mm.
generally that might be a good indication to, see your doctor and talk to someone. Most viruses, can last anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, and that's something really acute, right? So something else that maybe more complex in terms of, let's just say, a gut microbiome issue or things like that, those symptoms are going to last a lot longer than 2 weeks. So once you hit that mark, I definitely think it's a good little flag to say, is there something more serious going on? Is there something lingering? What's happening? And I also think that, of course, and this goes without saying, but any severe symptoms warrant urgent, workup, or I would say a thorough evaluation right away. I wouldn't sit on that for 2 weeks, but I would say, more moderate symptoms where you can live with them, but they're bothersome. That's the example of something where, watchful waiting for 2 weeks. You try a couple of things that you might normally do or think to try on your own. And then if those are not working, then I would say you should see somebody.
I'm curious, do you see a lot of people that end up almost normalizing exactly what you just said, where they've been struggling with some of these symptoms instead of 2 weeks for 10 years, and they're not even noticeable because they've been accepted of the normal? Are you seeing more of that? Or are you seeing more of, like you said, oh, this is emergent, this is new, I got to get help? I'm just curious because it feels like our conversation around health has become confusing, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. I will say it's really interesting when I see patients for like an annual physical. One chronic symptom that comes to mind that would be a good example of what you're talking about, where people could have this symptom for many, many years and become desensitized to it, is something like chronic constipation. For example, I ask about bowel movements, and someone's like, oh, I go a couple times a week, but that's like normal for me. I'm like, well, we should talk about that. So I definitely think it is a combination of things like that. And that's one of the reasons why it is good to go do an annual physical or do an annual wellness check and have a doctor who's being thorough and asking you those questions so that some of that stuff can get uncovered and doesn't get missed. There are things like that. And also, for example, like people being on medications for a long time and they're just like carried over and carried over. I'll give you an example. I had a new patient that came to see me, this was years ago, and he was on asthma medication and a medication for reflux. And I was like, well, so when was the last time you were like tapered down on these medications? How long have you been on them? That kind of stuff. And we got him off of both. So, and then he was, and then he was intermittently using his inhaler when he needed it. And we'd, bring it back up during the seasons where he was, triggered more and bring it back down. And it was a much better plan because he was a young adult. And, if you think about the lasting impacts of something that you do every day, that's something I talk a lot about in my practice, where, anything you do every day, you want to think about because it has a cumulative effect, either positive or negative, right? And so those like healthy routines or even medications that you're taking or supplements or things like that, just important to always re-examine and reevaluate. Do I need this? Is it helping me? Is it not? That kind of stuff.
I love that. It's interesting how it's like, yeah, this is what I've always done. It's working. It's like, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And that to me, like
Exactly.
you're talking about the concierge medicine approach, to me is what it sounds like, right? There's this really, kind of handheld, nurturing, supportive, a word that's been coming to me lately that I don't know if kind of the full mainstream is ready for, but sacred healthcare, like dare I say sacred healthcare. But I'm making the lunge there. Like, I think we got to bring the sacred healthcare to the mainstream because there's something in that feels like nurturing and just rooted in like the way we were all meant to live, I guess. I don't know the better way to put it.
Yeah.
How does
Yeah.
your yoga training influence your philosophy in your practice as a primary care and concierge medicine?
Yeah, great question. So, I would say one of the primary reasons why I love yoga and how I try to infuse it into my practice is just to invite daily movement practices into people's lives. I mean, for me, what I've started doing in the morning on days when I'm rushed and I don't have a lot of time is like 15 minutes of yoga in the morning, and it changes my day. And I love that, right? So you can build strength, I think you build a lot of confidence and inner strength also by doing something for yourself in the morning. So just taking like a little bit of time and building that into your life and into your practice. And so that's definitely one thing that I love about yoga. The other thing that I love, and there are many, so I'll try to just pick three, but another thing that I love is body awareness. So I think it's good to really understand how you're feeling in your body. Every day is different, you know, and recognizing that, because it's so easy to get caught up in things that are stressful and are, you know, busy routines and all of that kind of stuff. And the day will kind of get away from you. It's easy to not invite daily movement into your life in the afternoon or evening because of a busy day, or you're going to go see friends or whatnot. And so I think that having that check-in with yourself in the morning, you recognize, oh, I'm swollen here, this hurts, or I'm feeling good today. And like recognizing and appreciating all of that is really important.
Yeah, that body awareness. I was an athlete, a swimmer, and I look back
Uh,
now when I started developing more body awareness after swimming. And I'm like, I'm sure I had some, but it was just interesting. And thank God it wasn't soccer, but you know, swimming, I guess I just kind of managed to get through it. Okay, I love this. And for you around wellness goals, intuition, how do you help someone craft their wellness goals, and what role does intuition play with the broader conversation that we're talking about?
Yeah, so I would say, you know, wellness goals are really important because it helps to set expectations and to frame the journey a little bit, right? Because everyone has many things that could be focused on from a primary care perspective in terms of there's preventative health care, their active symptoms, and then there's also everyone's individual health goals, right? So there's like a whole checklist of things as a primary care doctor that I want to go through with patients when they come in for their annual physical. For example, cancer screening, screening for diabetes, screening for high blood pressure, screening for, you know, obesity, just as examples, right? These are like checklists of like, you know, guideline-based things I like to do. At the same time, you know, everyone has their own checklist of like, you know, I really want to work on, I mean, not to harp on this example, but let's just say like my gut health, or I want to work on my knee pain, or I want to, you know, for all these different things. And so I think it's important to kind of have health and wellness goals to start to frame how we can work together collaboratively. I always say as a primary care doctor, I'm a guide, right? I'm a guide for you and your health, and I want to help people get where they want to go. I'll give another example.
Yeah.
I was working as a resident in training. There was a patient who we had in ICU who was quite sick, and his quality of life at that point was such that really he could sort of eat during the day, but he was stuck in bed, and his family would bring him McDonald's. And I remember talking to him and being like, is this like, how do you feel about your overall quality of life? Are you happy? Like, is everything great? And he's like, this is all I've ever wanted in life. I'm so happy. That's important to recognize. Everyone's health goals are different, you know? So I think it's just important to check in with that so that then you can be aligned, because it's very easy to sometimes go overboard or, you know, do a more thorough investigation of a symptom when it's not necessary, or the opposite, right? To not do a thorough enough evaluation of a symptom when you should. And ultimately you have to listen to the patient, because I always say also, like, you know your body best. So if there's something going on, you have to tell me, because I can't find everything out on the exam, right? Or even with the history, like, you know, we try as much as possible to ask open-ended questions and try not to miss anything, but really it comes from the patient.
That example, you know, it's everyone's model of the world is different. And I'm wondering, as a doctor, if you're looking at the patient like, you should want more, or if that's like a part of the training is like, okay, like you want to be in bed watching TV, having your McDonald's, like that's all you. You know, and I guess it's like when the student is ready, the teacher arrives. But if the student's not ready, like, what are we doing? Like, celebrate his goals and where he's at.
Exactly. And, you know, I think it's funny because I learned this in my training as well, which is like medication is only as good as the buy-in from the patient is, right? Meaning, like, I can prescribe a zillion, medications, blood pressure medication, diabetes medication, antibiotics. If the patient doesn't want to take them, they're not going to be effective, right? And so it's funny because sometimes we would see patients and we get a limited amount of time with them, and you want to just treat everything in one go. So you want to give them a statin and a blood pressure medication and a this and it's too much. And then they would come back and not, take the medication. And then I learned to be much more stepwise, even though it would have been great to just kind of do everything all at the same time and get everything under control, because you have to get patients to buy into it, to want to do it, to understand that they're in control of their health, and then to take those medications consistently because they'll feel better or prevent chronic disease and things like that. So I think it's important to have that doctor-patient relationship in such a way that you work collaboratively together to reach those health goals. And, I think primary care too is kind of like the long game, right? So it doesn't all have to be fixed overnight. It's making small changes over time that then ends up with a big result.
In the small changes, those gains stacking, and the trusted relationship you're building with your clients, that's something that in some practices you may get 5 minutes with a doctor, it's never the same doctor, and it seems like that model could overlook some things, versus if the word nurturing keeps coming through times 1,000. This feels very nurturing.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And that's the other thing too, is, if you have a primary care doctor who's with you over, a very long period of time, you both get to understand each other better. In that respect, the medicine is better. And the reason is, typically then the patient's going to be more forthcoming and open because they're comfortable in that relationship, and and they feel safe and, as you said, nurtured and cared for. And as a physician, the more information that we have, the better we can diagnose and treat and prevent. And so it's just a better model all the way around. You're right, though. I mean, in a lot of systems now, the health care system is just overwhelmed. And so unfortunately, you can only do so much in a 15-minute visit. And if you're seeing a different doctor each time, it's hard on the doctor and it's hard on the patient.
This overwhelmed healthcare system, I've noticed this coming up more and more, and I'm not in the front lines of healthcare, so I believe what I'm hearing about the healthcare system being overwhelmed, and feel like that's 1,000 more percent the reason why preventative medicine and preventative healthcare and the modalities that you're talking about to keep you out of the system that could be overwhelmed and you're not going to get the quality of care, avenues like what Health Meets Wellness offers. But the opportunity for each person, myself, yourself, to be taking optimal care of ourselves, you as a listener. And one of the practices that I know you leverage with your clients is habit stacking as a practice with the preventative medicine. Could you share what habit stacking is and how you use that with your clients and patients? I say clients.
Yeah, definitely. I love habit stacking because it helps to foster routine. And so, I think that when you build on things that you're already doing, it feels good in the sense that you're reinforcing that positive behavior that you're already doing and then adding to it. And then you really do end up with a cumulative effect. So a good example is if you, for example, wake up and have water in the morning, then you put, for example, your workout stuff next to your glass of water. So when you wake up, then you have a sip of water, you hydrate, then you put your workout clothes on, and you're going to be much more likely then to do a morning workout routine if you're already in your workout clothes. You could substitute coffee or tea for water, but I was just using an example of something that someone might do in the morning.
The teeth brushing. I've gotten addicted to teeth brushing, brushing my teeth and dry brushing. That's my the dry brushing and the teeth brushing. And it feels so good. And then it's like, oh, you keep the momentum, the friction in the transitions. Like in triathlons, there's transitions, right? Swim, bike, run.
Yeah.
If you go slow on the transitions, or as a swimmer, it's like touching the wall, go. You got to keep the transitions moving. And I love to hear about people with their transitions, because sometimes things get lost in the transition. There's more friction. And then like you didn't do the second thing because you got stuck or distracted from the first thing. And I love how you explain habit stacking as a way to reduce that friction.
Yeah, I love the dry brushing reference. Wait, so I just have one question for you because I've tried
Yes.
dry brushing and maybe I have the wrong brush, but it's painful. Do you have a brush that's like feels good?
I think it hurts a little. It's a good hurt. It's a little bit of a good hurt. I don't know what it is. And I have the circle one, and I'm like, I guess
Yeah.
it's like I'm waking up. It does hurt a little
Mm.
bit. Now I feel a lot more awake.
Yeah.
I think you're doing it right.
It's funny. I do think those morning routines that wake you up though are great. A couple of mornings I've tried getting in like a cold plunge and it is so activating. It is amazing. So I think maybe it's a similar kind of thing with the dry brush.
It sounds like it is. It sounds like it is. It's kind of like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm awake. I don't know.
Yeah, a little bit of physiological stress and your body just goes right into
Oh,
action.
that's good. So we talked about movement. Could you share with us how you incorporate nutrition and why that's important for this conversation around primary care?
Yeah, definitely. So nutrition, I think, is really the cornerstone of health. In general, we always think of our bodies as being like a temple, to use your sacred
Yeah.
healthcare reference.
Thank you.
And so, yeah. And so, I think you have to be really mindful of what you're putting in your body. And because everything you put in your body affects all your cellular processes on a micro and macro level, and then that impacts your health overall. And so we really try to heal from the inside out at Health Meets Wellness by personalizing a meal plan so that our patients can reach their health and wellness goals, whether they're weight related, gut related, related to an autoimmune or rheumatologic condition, or anything else in terms of even just preventative care. I think that really focusing on whole foods, foods that are good for your genetic makeup, your preferences, your lifestyle, will help you feel good throughout the day, help maximize energy levels, concentration, and things like that, so that you can really look and feel your best.
So powerful. This is become one of my greatest life passions is the food journey. And I just don't know. There was something I started noticing actually when I would dine out, how some open concept kitchens that became pretty popular a few years back, maybe it's decades now. Uh, but if unless it's an open concept, you can't see the food. And that was a physical disconnect. Like you literally can't see how the food's being prepared. And that felt really symbolic to me, that awareness at the time of like the disconnect of us with our food, things like fast
Mm-hmm.
food, you can see that illustrated throughout. And for me personally, getting curious about my relationship with food, it opened up so many doors to build that intimacy and like start that healing process. And it feels underrated, but it's something we're doing at least once a day. I think most people are eating more than once a day, but we're gonna like talk about a
Yeah,
daily habit. You're doing this.
yeah, exactly. And I totally agree with you. I think that people are so far removed from what they're eating, and a lot of this processed food, quite frankly, isn't even real food, right? And so it's causing inflammation, it's causing weight gain, it's causing or leading to obesity and high cholesterol and high blood pressure and all of these conditions. And really treating the root cause, which is the food, could cure so many things. And I really love treatments where one treatment cures multiple things, right? So I think, focusing on food is really significant and important. And I also agree with you in terms of feeling separated, even from meat or fish or things like that. Like someone would say, I would never go hunting. I would never, kill an animal, but they eat chicken or they eat pork. And then it's like, well, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And I
Mhm.
just think that for everyone, and this is just kind of like a personal philosophy, but I think if you're going to eat fish, you have to, be okay with fishing and maybe try to catch a fish and eat it and see how that feels. I'm not a vegetarian. I do eat meat and I eat fish, but I
I'm
just
a
think it's
fisher.
important to
I'm a
understand that.
fisherwoman, so
Yeah, I love
yeah, catch a
it. Yeah, a
fish.
little- but yeah, I think it's important just to recognize and appreciate that, is that, we're all part of this cycle of life and part of the food chain, and to recognize our own mortality and the beauty of the food that we're consuming, and to be grateful for that, right? Because it's a beautiful thing.
It is. We have a mini food forest at the back of our house. It's like a 10-foot by 20-foot plot of land that in 2021, I felt very moved to convert this part of our lot to a food forest. My husband thought I was a little kooky. It was for my birthday. I bought myself a bunch of plants. I installed them all myself. And to literally before the show, I was checking on it and I was like, oh man, the moringa, I need to juice some of the moringa. And I've been doing like some moringa with the ginger lemon. But our star fruit has 8 baby star fruits, and one was on the
Wow.
ground, and it was so tiny, maybe an inch or two, and I was eating it. It had fallen, and I'm looking at these bigger star fruits, and I'm like, that's 2 years later, 2.5 years later, and I'm eating my star fruits, and I'm just like, this is so cool. And it just feels like a way more intimate experience of food than I could ever imagine. A smaller scale could be like a little herb garden or just one plant, or, there's simple ways to introduce that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally agree. And I actually do that. I keep like a little basil plant in my kitchen. And it's like I'll just replace it periodically when I need to, when it gets over trimmed. It's cheap and easy, but it's fun, and it's so much better than just buying the pre-cut basil, because it's fresh. I trim it every time I want to use the leaves. It continues to give, and I feel like it gives to the kitchen as well, right? So it brings color in, it brings life in. I love that. So
With
uh,
the meal plans, how are you formatting the meal plans? Is it meeting someone where they're at with their current dietary habits? Is it like starting completely separate from that and helping them just get on board with what you see as the right way to eat? There's nuance
yeah, that's a
there.
good question. Yeah, definitely. It depends. So we sort of gauge where somebody is in terms of readiness to change, and also how significantly we feel like we should change their diet based on their health and wellness goals. And, I would say I really put a lot of ownership and control of that in Elle Bernardo, our registered dietitian here at Health Meets Wellness, because she's wonderful and we work very collaboratively together. So, I kind of come up with my own plan when I see the patient initially, and I have an idea of what I think, she's going to do and what I would recommend. And then she chats with me about what her recommendations are, and we come up with a plan together. So it's nice too, because, sometimes I find that I'll, hear some things from a patient, and then it's a little bit different in terms of the information that she gets. And so we can put that together and really tailor something special for our patients.
That's amazing. And as we're in the holiday season, I know that someone may be listening to this episode not in the holiday season, but there's also times in the world where there's a lot of events or it's a little more stressed. And that could also be what, for some, the holidays can feel like. This time of year, do you have any tips on the movement side, on the nutrition side, on the overall well-being side that could help someone thrive instead of survive over the next couple weeks?
Yes, I love that. Thrive instead of survive. Definitely. I would say, just to actually bring it back to the yoga piece, like check in with yourself every day. Take a moment just to see how you're feeling. And it might help you start to make healthier decisions in terms of making sure that you just watch your portions. I always say, like, the dose makes the poison. So indulge, but just be mindful to take that moment, like have a bite, check in with yourself. Do you really want to eat the whole cookie or maybe half the cookie? And then the next day you have a different cookie or the other half of that same cookie that you like. But that way you're just not piling cookie upon cookie upon cookie. And what I mean by that is, like, using cookie as an example, but it's like when you allow yourself to kind of go off of your routine, then, as we were talking about, every day it has a cumulative effect. And so if you do the things in smaller doses and you allow yourself to engage and be involved, but have some boundaries or limits on what you're doing, I think that it helps to keep things in check. So then you don't actually end up so far away from where you were at the beginning of the holiday season, at the end of the holiday season.
You're not set back 5 years, it's just a week.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like, where am I? That's great. And it's interesting. I notice having the bite or two, the pause versus the cookie or two and the pause. They both kind of feel the same, but I always feel better after the bite or two versus the cookie or two. But it's like that pausing has to
Right.
happen for that check-in to really click in.
Exactly, exactly. And it's hard to do because we are all very routine oriented, but like that routine a little bit in terms of just like going for the next bite, taking a minute to check in with yourself and to enjoy the moment, enjoy who you're with, because food is I think, a lovely kind of community thing to share, right? And so, oftentimes during the holiday season, we're at an event, as you said, or we're out with friends, and just sort of not losing sight of that as being the main event, as opposed to, let's say, the food or the glass of wine or whatever else is there.
Yeah, that's great. Like the purpose. Why are you here? You're connecting with the loved ones. It's not to have your 16th magical Christmas cookie. It's the people that are there. Oh,
Exactly, exactly. I do think it is important to still have the cookie though. Like I'm not in favor of restricting, but I just think it's good to sort of like check in and then limit the portions, right? So in the sense of like don't eliminate, but just eat the recommended amounts, because generally in this country we eat much larger portions than would be recommended, and so that's something that I like to just kind of like reinforce and check in with, because most times like stop eating, and you wait a little bit, as you said, you're going to feel the same amount of satisfaction as if you had just eaten the whole cookie, and maybe better if you don't overeat.
yeah, that's great. The portion size, like the American portion size, I think this is an interesting segue into, I know you brought up weight management and obesity, some of the challenges as Americans that we face. And I think this is becoming a global challenge. And at the same time, this feels like the year of health innovation with some of these brand name drugs that they might have always existed, but I just really have heard about them a lot this year. I feel nervous, unless you're trading stocks and really hit it big with a little bucket of, these, I forget, is it like the GBL or one? You can inform me.
One, yeah, yeah, one
Yeah,
medications
yeah, I
or
think
glucagon, like yeah.
some of the financial firms literally built baskets of just those specific stocks so you could, win on the upside there. I'm former finance, so you have to forgive me. I sometimes get nerdy on the financial side, but yeah, just if you have any kind of yellow flags or awarenesses for people, your approach around primary care, preventative medicine, the functional medicine component, the nutrition, the movement, how committing to that versus the new medical innovation of the month, just if there's some upsides, downsides that are worth exploring, if there's anything you want to say. This is my lens looking at the past year.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, I definitely am in favor of the GLP-1 agonists or the GLP-1 medications like semaglutide, which is sold under the brand name Ozempic or Wegovy, as well as tirzepatide, which is the new combination medication that's a GLP-1 and a GIP. So two incretin hormones combined in one. And I'm a big proponent of these medications for a number of reasons. One, they're very effective, help people who have really been struggling with weight in terms of obesity as a chronic disease. And it's taken the stigma away from that in terms of people feeling like it's their fault, or that people like view them as undisciplined or things like that. And it's opened up the awareness that obesity is a chronic disease, and that there are hormonal changes and metabolic conditions that are, really making it difficult for people to lose the weight, diet, and exercise without the medication. And I also think it's really important to recognize that the medication, it needs to be used in combination with the diet and exercise to not only foster lasting positive behavior change, but also to have the positive health impacts that the medication can have with the weight loss. Meaning, lose weight in a way that is not focused on the right health impacts. You can lose lean muscle mass, you can lose bone density, and those can have an impact on your long-term health in terms of increasing your risk of osteoporosis or increasing risk of injury with a fall when you get older, for example, things like that. And decreasing strength, right? So then that's going to decrease mobility and activity over time. So really understanding how to take charge of your health and have ownership with your health, specifically with weight loss and these medications, I think is really important. And that's why I love the program that Health Meets Wellness, because we're combining the medicine, exercise, and nutrition for weight management, which is just the way I believe medicine should be practiced in general. And now we have these really powerful agents, which are these medications that we know work. And when you combine it with the with the exercise and nutrition, you help actually foster a positive feedback loop with these changes so that you see the weight loss, you want to continue to eat healthy, you want to continue to exercise because you're feeling good. And then I think overall, long term, that is the best possible outcome.
That makes a lot of sense to reinforce the lifestyle element. When someone is committing to those medicines, does that mean that they have to be on it forever? Is there a way to healthfully pull back? You had mentioned at the earlier conversation, asking clients, when was the last time you took a break, or I think titrated down? How does that work for these medications?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I would say it is patient specific. What the obesity medicine research shows is that obesity is a chronic disease, and so it should be treated as such, much like high blood pressure, high cholesterol. So is it possible to change the disease process with diet and lifestyle changes? Yes. However, the majority of people in that category, they will probably need to be on the medication for life. I do think that this is just the tip of the iceberg with the medication. And I think that there are different ways to use it, potentially, as we said, titrating it down, having a little holiday, or using it as needed, meaning like on the lowest possible dose, and then in combination with the diet and exercise. I do think that for patients who have not had a lifetime of obesity, but rather gained a lot of weight or a significant amount of weight in a shorter amount of time because of a specific change in their lifestyle or diet, for example, let's say somebody had kids in succession, has a desk job, and was relatively sedentary after gained weight and wasn't able to lose it after about 3 years. Than someone who has been obese since the age of 15 or 18, or, and I think in that case, pairing the medication to jumpstart their metabolism and foster these healthy behavior changes to lose the weight and then keep it off without the medication while maintaining the other weight management interventions, which are the diet and lifestyle modifications. I think that's ability, and that's a really exciting space to be in.
Yeah, I mean, even the example you gave earlier about the gentleman that was sick, it sounded like it was a newer sickness, but he was in the bed for most of that and eating the McDonald's. Chronic obesity and the limitations that can come with that, and the understanding of that as a disease. I'm curious about the root cause and some of the systemic challenges that we face. You heard me talk about the food forest, like I'm a real soil advocate. And so it's sitting within a large conversation, and it's just exciting that there are solutions when some of the bigger systemic issues may not have solutions anytime soon, if that makes sense. And, we're kind of where we're sitting in 2023 with where we're headed, and what you're doing with Health Meets Wellness is illuminating what you can do within your personal responsibility, whether you're using a drug like that to help you navigate the weight challenges and the disease of obesity or not. That's got to be a part of the conversation, no matter who you are. It's one of the takeaways I'm getting.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I hear what you're saying as well, right? Like, I mean, honestly, if we could treat the root cause, which is the food industry in this country, that would be great. But I think it's really taking a multifaceted approach in terms of, first, the patients do need, or people do need to lose the weight. And if you change the food at this point for someone with chronic obesity, they still will not probably have the same results that they would with the medication, for example.
Mhm.
And then secondly, if we do start to invite awareness into diet and exercise and foster these healthy behavior changes, people will naturally start eating different foods, and hopefully the food industry will shift with that. I know that there were a couple of articles saying that some companies were nervous because sales had gone down for some like unhealthy foods like Twinkies and things like that, because people just aren't eating them as much anymore. And it's like those positive changes will then start to reflect, hopefully, positive changes in the food industry as well.
When I was in college, I came up with this word called citizumer, a citizen and a consumer. It's a little cheesy. I can be cheesy. So citizumer. And, you know, sitting in 2023, I think back, that was like 2005, citizumer. And I'm like, consumer sentiment is powerful. But there's an awareness piece, something I'm aware of. We could fact check this, but I believe it's like 97% of soil is depleted of its proper nutrients. I find that extremely concerning. And even if that number was 10%, like if 10% of soil was lost to nutrient density, I would feel concerned. So, again, it's like, for me, that took me 20 years to figure out. And I'm like, oh man, the only thing I know I could do is plant a food forest, but I'm really concerned about soil health and what's happening to our food. And I just love that you bring up some of the other food companies, because consumer sentiment and through the education, it starts to build that awareness and the shifts in that behavior. And I feel really curious and excited of what's possible. And that may be part of the entrepreneur in me, of innovation and possibility. But yeah, it's curious times.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think we are living in exciting times in that respect. Things are very dynamic right now with, the wellness industry in general. And I think COVID really did shine a lens on that. And I think people are at this moment more engaged with their health, more open to wellness in terms of complementary and alternative medicine in this country in particular, where we weren't as open to that as a society. And I think it's an exciting time to see how we can really start to foster some healthy changes with our diet and nutrition in this country.
Amen, sister. So where business meets well-being, you are the CEO, you're leading the helm of your company. Are there any insights that you want to share for the entrepreneurs listening to help them maintain their business growth, and also tapping into their overall well-being?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think, as a CEO or as a leader of any company, everything trickles from the top down. So, you have to stay positive and try to, make everything in the company, whether or not it's going exactly to your plan or not, into a positive towards a common goal, so that everybody is working together, and so that you feel like are of the company and building it together. In that respect, I think it helps to not only a sense of camaraderie, but also buy into the brand, because everyone, whether or not you're a practice or not, like, client or consumer sees everything, even if you don't think they do. They know what's going on the inside. And so I just think it's really important to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people in your company who you like and who you believe really have the same goals for you and for the brand, because then you'll work collaboratively together. And there's so much fun, creativity, and excitement in uncharted territory. And so having people around you who are open to that really make the whole journey a lot better. And that's what it's all about, the journey, So just as we talked about, even like taking time to check in, I try to, take time to check in with myself and with everyone in the company, so that we're all aligned.
Oh, I love that. And I know that you are in New York City and you have the practice there. You also have telehealth available for different states, and people can, in Florida, use your telehealth services. Also New York, New Jersey, Texas, Wisconsin, Wyoming, Puerto Rico. Am I missing any other on the telehealth?
That's it.
Okay, awesome. And there's an opportunity also for our listeners, if they want to follow you on your Instagram, Dr. Elizabeth Sharp, or at Health Meets Wellness. And also a initial consult, you get a free 20-minute health call with one of the Health Meets Wellness HMW. I love that, healthcare providers. So we just thank you very much. And this has been such a treat. Dr. Elizabeth Sharp, CEO of Health Meets Wellness. Do you have any closing thoughts for our listeners today?
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to our podcast. And I hope that you enjoyed it and that you check us out on Instagram and on our website.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll be able to have you back and have a follow-up episode if there's any questions. I feel like we planted some seeds, pun intended. And so if that makes sense, we'll do that. And just thank you so much, Dr. Elizabeth Sharp. And I'm wishing you blessings on the journey and just appreciate the work that you're doing to help others. So thank you.
So much. Be well.
Thank you.